Moving to our training topic today, it should have been a done deal. Instead, it turned into a figurative own goal in what's been dubbed Mokoena Gate, the recent Bafana Bafana fiasco in fielding a midfielder who shouldn't have played after picking up 2 yellow cards. Our South African football team have made their lives especially difficult now in securing qualification for next year's FIFA World Cup in North America. Now, the boys in yellow and green take on Zimbabwe and Rwanda next, both at home, and have to win both to clinch a place in the grandest tournament of them all. Well, our News 24 sports journalist covering the Zim clash in Durban this Friday is Tashreeq Vardien. He joins us live now from the city. Tashreeq, how are you doing? Welcome to your debut edition of The Lead.
How's it, Graeme? All good, man.
Lekker, bro.
Okay. Over there.
Yeah, I can't complain. I'm a bit jealous. You get to travel a little bit. It's always good to get out and about. And I'm now so invested and interested in our coming up 2 fixtures with both Zimbabwe and Rwanda. But let's start here for somebody who's perhaps missed this important context. What is Mokoena Gate in the most simple terms? In my mind's eye, it seems like the most bizarre development that I've seen in recent football history, not even Bafana, but up and down the world.
The irony to it all began here in Durban. So I have to take you back to 2023, which was actually my first time here in the city covering Bafana Bafana and Benin. It was a match in November, and Bafana had won. That is when the first of 2 yellow cards was picked up by Mokoena. Months later, in mid-2024, obviously against Zimbabwe, Mokoena picks up another yellow card. Then fast forward, months later, again, early 2025, against Lesotho, is where Mokoena, who should have been suspended after picking 2 consecutive yellow cards, should have sat out, which then started the whole Mokoena Gate that lasted for about 7 months before FIFA eventually gave their ruling. But before FIFA actually gave their ruling, after that Lesotho match, it only took about 36 to about 42 hours later when, our favorite foes, the passionate Super Eagles fans, picked up on that blip that not only the South African Football Association, but Bafana Bafana's team manager, Vincent Seka, missed up on that Mokoena should not have played that particular match. Fast forward, obviously, those hours later, the Nigerian fans picked up on that, and chaos obviously ensued. However, then 7 months later, last week, FIFA give their verdict. Bafana docked 3 points, moves from first place, which guarantees you a direct ticket to the World Cup next year in the US, Mexico, and Canada, drops to second place, 11 points with Benin, but Benin holds a superior goal difference. So, yeah, nothing, when it comes to Bafana, and I love, nothing ends without a soapy-orientated feel when it comes to our national football team. And I'm sure you, with that giggle, this, obviously having followed the team since the yesteryears, since we've enjoyed the 90s and the early 2000s, and these past 2 decades, up until, I would say, about 12 to 24 months ago, things have, rather been doomed, but in this past 12, 24 months has been, blossomed. But obviously this past 7 months with this Mokoena Gate has sort of reminded us about that particular dark age which we experienced. And
yeah,
it was a reminder.
2 decades, Tashreeq, of a dark age. Quick one. The sports minister, Gator McKenzie's asked for an investigation here, right? And then just before we move on, and I was chatting to your editor, Lloyd Bernard, just before you and I had this discussion now. And I was asking him, just as I was walking through the newsroom, I was like, and the question for you, Vincent should have known, Teboho should have known before he went out on field. This is such a glaring error. It really baffles the minds. Surely the player himself should have picked this up.
Yeah, it's the kind of mediocrity that's often sprinkled in and around, South African football. And it's the unfortunate thing. And what I like about this whole case is that Hugo Broos himself came out and said, let's not blame Vincent. Let's not blame Teboho. He even went further and said, now that you bring it up with Gaten McKenzie, he said he doesn't want the sportsman to even investigate that further. It's an error. It's a let's move on. Let's kick on. Let's focus on the positive. There's 2 matches in hand. We go and win that. Hopefully Benin slips up along the way and we score ourselves a World Cup ticket. But yeah, in saying that, it's very important that this turns into a very, very important lesson for not only South African football, but everyone in South Africa in itself, that we can't allow such errors to happen. We need to be razor sharp focused when it comes to these kinds of things.
100%. And we just can't afford it, especially, when our sporting teams, our sporting superstars are firing on all cylinders as of late, from track and field to rugby to cricket. We really are in a fantastic age of South African sports at the moment. We're spoiled for choice week in, week out. And I think, the Bafana Bafana team on such a great, run of form at the moment. They're seeing that as well, and they obviously want to subscribe to that general sort of zeitgeist of the moment. Okay, let's go into this, Tashreeq. We're well on our way to qualifying, as you say. How do the current board standings look? Benin's at the top. We're still second. They've got a greater goal difference. And we now play Zimbabwe as well as Rwanda at home. Thankfully, both at home. One in Durban, one in Mbombela. Certainly, the bookies are looking at us, and we've got a bit of an odds in our favor at the moment, right?
Yeah. The reason we have 2 home matches is because Zimbabwe, after obviously many years, they don't have a CAF-approved venue. Funny enough, this whole story, Bafana were this close to actually playing that particular tie in Botswana, which most likely could have caused somewhat of a stir. However, luckily, it turns out in our favor that we're playing that away match on home soil. And how it looks otherwise in the group, while Benin are first, South Africa on second, and we know the goal difference there. In third and fourth place, we have Nigeria and Rwanda, who are on 11 points, 3 points just below us, as well as 2 games in hand. And what's particularly interesting about that, we know how important our history is when it comes to Nigeria against them as well, and how hungry and how also determined, and how also, if I were to put Nigeria alongside Bafana Bafana, Nigeria will always somehow supersede Bafana Bafana just because of the sheer dominance they've had over the continent over the past decades. We know what they are capable of. However, in the current state of things, Bafana Bafana are really playing some of the best football on the continent. And if Nigeria goes up against, and fun enough, Nigeria play one of their matches on South African home soil, because Lesotho, another country which we're familiar with, also don't have a CAF-approved stadium. They play their match up in the new Peter Mokaba Stadium, which adds a bit of spice to it. But I don't foresee Nigeria slipping up against Lesotho in that match. However, Nigeria do face Benin in their last match, and that's going to add some sort of interesting factor to that.
Yeah, when did Benin suddenly get so good at football? Am I missing something? I'm quite a casual sort of AFCON follower. Obviously, I back Bafana Bafana in any major tournament by default. I'm a Spurs supporter. We won't go into that discussion. But with Benin, am I missing something? Have they always been this good?
No, you're not. Yes and no. I say yes because at the same time, African football is such a in such a unique place that Bafana Bafana can go to Rwanda 2 years ago and lose 2-0. Rwanda are now sitting a foot as well in this group. South Africa last year or 2 years ago against South Sudan, another country, ended up just winning by slender margin 3-2. So we have these minnow countries, faring very well in African football. Cape Verde last year nearly had our ticket at the Africa Cup of Nations, and we had to go out and defeat them on penalties. So these African nations, they're putting up a fight. Sometimes they're not technically gifted, but There's that sheer will, there's heart, there's bravery, there's courage, there's the willingness to put your body on the line and fight for something as far greater than yourself and putting your country on the map. So as far as Benin is concerned, they may not just be particularly technically gifted as far as South Africa and Nigeria is concerned, but you can't discount them for heart and bravery and what they put on a pitch for 90 minutes.
Yeah. It's like to see an underdog story, bro. I love it. Okay.
Let's
take a leaf from Coach Hugo Bruce's book, and let's also put the Mokoena Gate for a side. You know, we've discussed it now. It is what it is. We can't go back and change it. Let's hope, as you say, we can move on from it. You know, Bafana Bafana is having a bit of a renaissance tour. It's got elements harking back to those great days with Benny McCarthy, with Andre Arendse, fantastic goalkeeping legend. You've got this great piece up on News 24, Shades of a Golden Era, Bafana Legends on Bruce's Boys, and a World Cup dream that you penned alongside Aten Tsotsi. Tell us a little bit about that interview with Andre. What are they saying about seizing the moment at the moment?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things, obviously, is teaming up with your colleagues. And Tsotsi, I had a conversation with Andre, and I had a conversation with Aaron Mokoena. Andre was basically, you know, his story is such a wonderful story and such a very interesting narrative where in those 90s, before the 1998 World Cup, he was, obviously, we know in the 1996, he was cognizant in that Barker team that won the AFCON, South Africa's lone AFCON title that we often refer to in every second sentence when it comes to Bafana Bafana. And he was so important to that. Fast forward 2 years, he helped Bafana Bafana qualify for the 1998 World Cup. But in a warm-up match, he gets injured. He redeems himself, qualifies for, help Bafana Bafana qualify for the 2002 World Cup. Bafana Bafana obviously go out there and do very well. Don't go out to the group stages, but it's very important to see that in those two qualifiers, 1998 and 2002, with what Andre explained, is how the fans was really behind South Africa and how important it is for the nation to back the national team. He has now seen it with the Proteas. He has now seen it with the Springboks, and he's definitely seen it and been in that shoes during those phases in 1998 and 2002. When I spoke to Aaron Mokoena, he himself obviously felt the blip of failing to qualify for the 2006 World Cup, but at the same time, seeing what captaining a national team at the 2010 World Cup can do for a nation. So these stories, these narratives about two individuals, and they basically paint a picture on how important, firstly, fans is, and how important having a coach who, as you mentioned, Hugo Bruce, a renaissance under his flagship, is now the longest-serving coach, and the recently passed Barker's near four-year tenure. So if I look at that and how important these legends are speaking about the current crop of players and what they have done and what they can certainly do next, they know what the stakes are, and they're really, really backing these boys to go all the way.
Yeah, 100%. Other than 1996, I often sometimes I have it saved under my liked videos on YouTube. I'll go look at Sipiwe Chabalala's opening goal against Mexico in 2010. I think every South African knows exactly where they were when that first goal screamed into the back of the net. It was absolutely triumphant, and I honestly still get goosebumps to this day.
Honestly, do still get goosebumps. I remember clearly where I was, and I was in a store at the waterfront because, lo and behold,
you joking?
I don't think I'm the only one.
I was in the waterfront as well, except I was a waiter at a restaurant.
I was at the store. I mean, Graeme, you know, Cape Town was absolutely insanity
pumping
for that game.
Yes,
it
pumping.
Was full in every corner in the CBD. And my friends and I, we had nowhere to go. The fan parks were literally full hours before kickoff already. Literally hours before kickoff, the fan was full. And we ended up at the waterfront. The waterfront was jam-packed, and we just ended up in the shop. They were like, yo, come through. And we started a thing at the shop. And that first goal, that when it hit the top of the net, I could not believe my eyes. And I think it still gives me chills even thinking about it today.
Yeah, 100%, man. Okay, back to reality now. When we look at Zimbabwe, they're not necessarily, people think, when they think of Zimbabwe, they think, okay, they were once upon a time fairly good cricketers. They're not so bad anymore. And then they think of football and then think, they should be an easy walkover for Bafana Bafana. But in actual fact, they've got a fair track record of wins against us. So it's not necessarily just a quick walk in. We can get one goal and sort of, park the bus for the rest of the game. We need to win decisively to avoid an upset here, right?
Yeah, hopefully if we can go into this match and score a couple of goals and not concede any, because if you look at that record against Zimbabwe, although what I like about this record is that although we've played 19 times and having won, I think 9 times, they won 9 times, and as compared to Zimbabwe 7, is that Zimbabwe has only won literally on merit one important game, which was after the 1992 Bafana Bafana was obviously reinstated. And then it was during a World Cup qualifier and Zimbabwe won. Obviously, that team from Zimbabwe was obviously stacked with Peter Ndlovu and other big names, including, Liverpool legend Bruce Grobbelaar. Thereafter, Zimbabwe don't really have somewhat of a grip on Bafana Bafana, although they have victories. The victories and the draws that have come for Zimbabwe has been in international friendlies and COSAFA Cup matches. Those matches are considerably known as the lesser known matches. For Bafana Bafana, most of their victories have come obviously in Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers, sometimes at AFCON. Bear in mind, Zimbabwe are also in our group at the 2025-2026 Africa Cup of Nations that kicks off in December. Most of the victories that Bafana Bafana have over them are in World Cup qualifiers and AFCON qualifiers, as well as AFCON matches. So that puts Bafana Bafana in a good state and a mental sort of, mental positivity, for lack of a better term, over our neighbors.
Yeah, 100%. I don't want us to put the cart before the horse before we discuss Rwanda, because I feel like you and I are going to have another discussion before that match again, because I really would like to and look forward to that. Let's end off here. What's on the rest of your sporting diary for the rest of today as we lead up to the match at 6 p.m. on Friday?
Okay, so today already at about 3 o'clock, I'll be at the Moses Mabhida Stadium for the match day 1 press conferences. Hugo Bruce alongside Ronwen Williams will address the media before training. Half an hour after training, Zimbabwe head coaches and captain will address the media as before they go to training. And then on Friday as well, I'm back early at the stadium, chatting to fans. You can follow our live update on News 24. It will be live from 2 p.m. already. I'll be chatting to fans. I'll be chatting to interesting people that are at the match who hopefully comes early. It's a big game. I'm expecting a huge crowd to pull through. And tickets are not as expensive as the Springbok tickets. Clip that.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something to celebrate. How much of a difference? Do you know?
Big difference. I think it's the Bok tickets. Obviously, it ranges from about 250, 300 rand, way up to like 4,000 rand, 3,000 rand. Whereas Bafana tickets ranges from 60 rand up to 300 rand.
Sure, what a score, what a deal, bro. And I feel like we've got it in us. Touch wood that we're gonna clinch this thing, bro. Where can anybody follow you on socials, Tashreeq?
As per usual, Tashreeq Vardien on Twitter, Instagram. That's it.
Lekker, bro. Okay, looking forward to the game. Let's chat after that. We'll decompress, get ready for Rwanda, because that, whether we like it or not, that game is also going to happen. Let's hope Benin loses all of their games as well and has a terrible goal difference. We can finally see Bafana Bafana playing in a World Cup again. Thanks for your time today and good luck.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Graeme. Cheers.